A very good morning and welcome. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly, watching Media Monitor live on SABC News, Africa's news leader, right here on Channel 44. The concept of this program is to monitor and evaluate media coverage of some of the major news stories of the week. We look at the story that did not make headlines and also look at the story behind the story. The aim of the show, once again, is to put the media in the spotlight. In our lineup today, we look at the media coverage through analyzing the role of media in the elections. The Oscar trial, was it ethical for media to broadcast the image of River Steenkamp's wounds and thus going viral? We also delve into whether the media plays a critical hand during protests. We analyze the media coverage of Chris Hani's commemoration. And lastly, the Shuin Dewani murder case. To give us analysis on media coverage of these major stories, let's welcome Teresa Mallinson, a freelance journalist, Mr. Noah Marutlule, the director at Calliophas Africa Foundation, Mr. Wadim Schreiner, the deputy chairperson of the South African Media Monitoring and Measurement Association. And lastly, on the line, we'll be talking to Khadija Patel, managing editor of South Africa Vote 2014.co.za. You can be part of our discussion today by calling us on +2711 714-6847, 714-6843, 714-6857. You can also share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, and like our Facebook page, Media Monitor. A very good morning to you. In our top story today, South Africa hosts its 5th general elections on May 7, 2014, celebrating 20 years of freedom since the end of apartheid. It is reported that millions of youth, better known as the Born Frees, who have registered for the first time to vote, believe that their ballot won't count and frankly don't see the point of it and therefore don't intend on voting. Now, with social media being at the fingertips of the majority of youth, we want to find out about the role on the media in educating and informing the youth about the importance of the ballot. Now, panel, a very good morning to you and thank you so much for joining us today on Media Monitor.
Thank you.
Now, panel, let's just get this straight. Is the media doing enough to inform and encourage the youth to be actively involved in the forthcoming elections? Let's start with you, Teresa.
Well, I think there's lots of issues to look at, and one of them is if you're a young person and you don't want to vote for any of the major parties, you don't really know what your alternatives are, because I must say the media hasn't done a good job of covering the smaller parties.
What do you...
I think it's not just about the elections. I think traditional media in particular in South Africa are not very good in talking and addressing the youth in general, irrespective if it is the elections or not. But it's, in my opinion, particularly bad around the elections. The topics that are being discussed have got very little relevance and very little connection to the youth. They're very big words, big talks, big plans, and it's not being broken down. I think it's a very, very dangerous and very, very sad situation, something that urgently needs to be addressed.
Noah, I want to hear your views on this.
Right, elections are the hallmark of representative democracy. And now what we see happening currently is that I think the media, the target for the media is actually not encompassing everybody. The target for the media is people that have voted before, people that know exactly what's happening within the electoral spectrum. It is not directly targeting the youths. So I think we might be having a problem there. The media is not doing a great job in getting the youths involved in the process of election.
Now, panel, let's look into how the South African media seemingly gets derailed by the internal disputes of certain bodies or organizations. And then what is media's sole responsibility when it comes to elections reporting? Wadim?
I think the challenge that we have is, and I'm not pointing the fingers entirely at the media, is that what we find in the discussions in the media sphere is largely not policy driven. In other words, we're looking at everything else but policy. We're looking at internal fightings between parties. We're looking at rallies. We're looking at events, classical aspects around events, and it's not being broken down to the actual issues. Now, we can go and point to the media and go and say it's the media's fault that is the case, but on the other side, it's also equally the party's fault who are creating events that have got a bigger focus on, what you're saying towards or against the other party rather than what is actually your own issue. So media in that sense are only reflective of what the parties are putting out. So I think it's a chicken and egg situation that Doesn't help the parties, it doesn't help the media, and it certainly doesn't help the voters.
Thank you very much. Let's take Khadija Patel on the line. Khadija, a very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on Media Monitor.
Thank you very much.
Now, Khadija, tell us about your WhatsApp initiative. What does it entail? Who is it aimed at? What are its objectives?
Okay, so the WhatsApp initiative that you're talking about is connected to the South Africa Votes 2014 .co.za project. It was launched a few months ago, and realizing that there are some weaknesses in the coverage of politics and of the election in mainstream media, we've launched this project aimed to complement existing coverage of the elections and, to emphasize the ordinary person, the ordinary South African's experience, their analysis, their opinion of this election and the surrounding, policy discussions, etc. So together with this, the project has been running for a number of months already. But together with this, last week we launched, an added dimension to the project, which allows South Africans to WhatsApp us, to, send us their views, their pictures, their stories over WhatsApp. So, using technology to broaden our reach across South Africa. WhatsApp is one of the most popular, social platforms in South Africa. Is growing tremendously, and it's relatively, cheap to use. So we're hoping to, use WhatsApp to reach more South Africans and, to actually give a fuller, use WhatsApp to help us give a fuller picture of how people are seeing this election.
Thank you very much, Khadija. Noah, what do you think about this initiative? Do you think that the youth is going to latch onto it? Since, it comes on in a WhatsApp format that almost everybody has access to.
I think it might work, but the question that we need to ask is what kind of youth do we have in this country? Do we have a younger generation that really look at elections as something that is important to them and to the country? If we can answer that question or such questions, I think that can lurch. But in my view, I think we have a youth that feels elections is not for them. So that's where we'll actually have other people being left out of the bus. But our youth are not more politically oriented.
Now, Upena, let's just understand this. The youth of pre-1994 were more than eager to vote, not because they were prompted by media, but because they were prompted by circumstances. What role should the media play now in educating the youth about the importance of elections, as Neo's rightly pointed out? Teresa?
Well, I think going back to what Vadim said earlier, it's not only the media that we have to point fingers at, but also political parties. And a couple of weeks ago, City Press published this very interesting graphic that showed the age of the different MPs on the 2009 candidate list. And, the DA and the ANC, to look at the two biggest parties, the median age of their MPs was really, really high. And it will be interesting when we look at the candidate list for this year to see if the age of the MPs is brought down, particularly what the age of the EFF MPs is, because everyone talks about the youth, the parties, the youth vote, youth unemployment, let's help, but I don't see parties really tackling youth issues.
Vadim?
I think there's another challenge. I think we are grouping everything into youth.
Yes.
And youth is a very widely defined term, as we know, since we've looked at all the coverage around the ANC Youth League. You can go and be quite old to still be considered a youth. So first of all, that in itself is considered a challenge. The second one is that people don't like to go and be put into one very big basket. It's actually about them. So young people in the Western Cape have got different challenges and issues other than unemployment, which is a common issue. Then, for instance, people in Gauteng, young people want to know what is it that you are going to go and do for me. Not what is it that you are going to go and do for the youth of the country, but for me. And unless you address something, you say something that is really resonates with me as an individual rather than as a collective group. And when you address my issues rather some kind of an umbrella issue of everything all, it's going to go and be something that's untangible. And the moment that it is untangible, people saying, I've heard it all before, it makes no difference to me, let me go and continue. And that is the problem. It's the lack of closeness to the actual individual people's needs and how those policies and issues are addressing individual people's needs. It's not the plan, it's the action. And unfortunately, we're talking at this point of time, both media and the political parties, too much plan, too little action.
Thank you very much, Wadim. Now, Khadija, can you just tell us, how will this WhatsApp initiative be sustained? Is it going to be ongoing even after the elections? And how can people participate?
Look, the WhatsApp initiative is the South Africa Votes 2014 project. So, the name gives it away that it is particularly related to this election. Whether this is something else afterwards, we're looking to options. But until then, your viewers can come over to the South Africa Votes 2014.co.za website. They can read the content we have there. And also, of course, WhatsApp us on 0760195862. The number is also on the front page of the website, and we look forward to hearing more from your viewers.
Thank you very much, Khadija, and best of luck with that initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khadija. While when we return, we will discuss the media coverage on the ongoing Oscar case and, of course, the court evidence that went viral on cyberspace. Remember, you can be part of our discussion by calling us on +2 711 714 6843, 714 6847, 714 6857. Share your views and comments on Facebook as well as on Twitter. Media Monitor returns shortly after this. Exactly, on the aftermath as well. Welcome back to Media Monitor. Remember, you can be part of our discussion today by calling us and sending us tweets. In our next story, State Prosecutor Gerinel demanded that Oscar Pistorius publicly take responsibility for killing his girlfriend while telling him to look at a graphic image of the gunshot wound to River Steenkamp's head. Nel said the model's skull exploded when it was struck by one of 4 bullets that the Blade Runner fired through a closed toilet door in his home last year. Earlier, Nel presented to the court Pistorius shooting at a watermelon, saying it was softer than brain. Let's take a look at this clip compiled by one of our producers, Sibusisi Wetongo.
Day 19 of the Oscar Matter trial was dramatic. The Blade Runner faced a tough grilling from State Prosecutor Gerinel for the first time. Nel was unrelenting in his questioning, and the court had to be adjourned a couple of times when the athlete was unable to continue.
You made a mistake.
That's correct.
You killed a person, that's what you did, isn't it?
I made a mistake.
You killed River Steenkamp, that's what you did.
I made a mistake, my lady.
You're repeating it 3 times. What was your mistake?
My mistake is that I took Riva's life, my lady.
You killed her. You shot and killed her.
The trial will resume on Monday, 14 April, and will run until Friday, 16 of May.
All right, panel, what do you think about this? What are your views on the fact that certain conditions were actually handed down to all the media houses that were going to be part and broadcasting this trial? But then there was massive protest when gruesome images of River Steenkamp were shown during the trial. Do people fully understand what the role of media is supposed to be in this trial? Noah?
I think, people requested that they want to see what's happening and what actually happened. And now when this was shown, particularly the head wound was shown. So many people made noises and stuff like that. But the question is, when they said they wanted to see what happened, what did they want to see? They should have expected that the West would come when some of the issues were discussed. But this particular one obviously helps the prosecution also in its case. It helps strengthen the case, and the people actually saw what they requested to see. In my view, I don't think there was anything wrong with that.
What do you?
I agree. The rules were there, but on the other side, and so far, the media have been sticking to those rules. In this particular case, the prosecution made a decision, unannounced, unprompted, to go and put a specific picture up on display. Nobody knew it was going to go and come. What would media supposed to go and do? Stop it, blacken it out? I don't think there was even a split second to go and think, what is that you actually going to go and do? And again, it's part of the court case. There is a PG rating attached to it. People should go and expect this is a killing after all. Somebody got brutally killed. So the fact that some of those things might be uncomfortable for sensitive viewers, then sensitive viewers perhaps shouldn't be listening or switching onto the channel and listen to the radio.
Thank you, Wadim. Well, most people seem to be criticizing Nell's cross-examination methods. Do you think that the media is also portraying him in this manner, as such?
Well, they've been criticizing Barry Rue, now they're criticizing Harry Nell. I mean, everyone there is doing their job. Barry Rue did the job to obviously, look at the side of Oscar Pistorius. Harry Nell does what Harry Nell is supposed to go and do. I think we would be extremely disappointed if it wasn't the case. And I think it's a very good example also for how prepared the NPA is for this particular case.
In fact, people thought he was rather sleepy during the first part of the trial.
Absolutely. Well, it was his job. I mean, he wasn't obviously leading the evidence. He was leading the evidence, hence he couldn't go and make any accusations. This is a sign that the South African judicial system is working, that it's robust, that there's a discussion. We've got a judge that presides over this one, and also basically tells people to go and stop when it is too much. I don't know what else people would go and expect. It's the job to be able to go and do it that way.
Teresa, what are your views?
Yeah, I would agree with Wadim. I mean, everyone when now... sorry, let me start again. Everybody was thinking that Barry Rue was the guy and comparing him to Chuck Norris. And I got this feeling that people were a little bit worried, would Nell measure up?
Absolutely.
And now he has, and he's being criticized as well. So I think it's like what Wadim says, what we expect, he must do his job.
Absolutely. Now, panel, many people have shown lack of interest in this trial. And then Oscar taking the stand last week puts it back on the front pages. Once again, what's our media saying to us? Are they growing fatigued on factual, impartial reports till judgment has been handed down? Noah?
I think the media has done a brilliant job in this particular regard. And yes, people were waiting for the moment when Oscar would take the stand. But all in all, I think heads off to the media. They've done a brilliant job. And we've been told what we really were expecting to hear, and we've seen what we're expecting to see, despite the fact that you have people that go, no, this was not supposed to happen. It's not a romantic case, by the way. It's a murder trial. So whatever comes out of there, people have to be ready, and heads off to the media.
Now, my worry, panel, is we get similar abbreviated reports, no new angles or developments in terms of journalistic aspects. How many reports have followed up on the iPhone that was supposedly taken overseas to be decoded? Most people, including Oscar, didn't even know there was a video on a public domain rather, that was when he was shooting at watermelons. Where are our investigative journalists here? Teresa?
Yeah, I think we've kind of just get obsessed with the day-to-day, what's happening in the trial.
Just the juicy bits. We'll leave everything else out.
And I also think, to be fair, our investigative journalists are busy investigating other stories that may be of greater national importance.
What do you...
Yeah, I think journalists are also, of course, very careful, because one of the last things that you want to go and have is accusations that there was a trial by the media and that media influenced the outcome of the decision. So anything that currently brings out new information, and we had that before. We had it during the bail application. We had it just before the trial, where things were brought up or come up, and there were accusations that media actually are trying to go and push the trial to go into a specific direction. I think media are aware of that situation. I'm generalizing, but I think they are. And they're very cautious in now putting out information that, will be discussed, will influence the discussion perhaps in the courtroom, will even most importantly, perhaps in one way or the other, influence the judge. I think they've got to go and treat very carefully there. I think they're aware of that one. They're sticking to the facts. The fact that becomes perhaps a little bit boring, well, that's the nature of a trial. It's not always that great.
Not always that great. Thank you very much, Wadim. Well, when we return, we're going to look at whether media sufficiently covered the Bloemhof protest. You can be part of our discussion today by calling us on +2711 714 6843, 714 6847, 714 6857. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor as well as Facebook. We'll return shortly after this. Don't go anywhere. Do you need more water?
The employment equity stats that were released 2 or 3 days
Okay.
ago from the department.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Remember, you can be part of our discussion by calling us on the numbers that will appear on the bottom of your screens, or contact us on Facebook as well as Twitter. In our next story, the situation is slowly returning to normal at Boitumelong Township near Bloemhof in the Northwest Province after residents embarked on a violent service delivery protest demanding that their local municipality, Lekwatemane, rather be disbanded. Now, the strike has claimed the life of a teenage boy, while several locals have been put in custody and charged with public violence. Let's take a look at this clip.
We're very clear we are taking a stand. Any criminal behavior shall be dealt with. We will follow everybody. We don't care who it is. We don't care what position they hold anywhere in this country. They will be followed with.
All right, now, Penna, what are your views that during community protests, government properties are often vandalized? Do you think that the media has played its role in educating people about peaceful protests? Teresa.
I would say it's almost the opposite, because we've heard protesters complain, and we know it's true that the media only pitches up when there is violence. So it might be unintentional, but it's almost like the media is feeding that violence because that's when they pay attention.
Is that your view, Wadim?
There's a challenge. I mean, and I agree with Teresa, we hear about the stories on the ground when something actually happens. So it's, again, this event-driven journalism rather than the issue-driven journalism. So it's a problem. There's many reasons for it. I've heard them all from the media. We don't have enough people on the ground. We don't have representatives there. We don't understand the communities. Right or wrong, it's a different story. But it is a challenge, and it is also very, very bad, because what basically happens is you've got to go and have reactive journalism. So you're trying to go and get the voices and the reasons afterwards. You're trying to go and unpack it. You're trying to go and speak to people, and it doesn't really go and help anyone. But we also must understand that, you know, everybody knows it's elections. Media are looking for big events, so that is also an opportunity for communities to go and raise their objections, knowing that media are going to go and pick up on it far more than, you know, outside of election period. So it's something that feeds itself.
Very, very much so. Now, some of our reporters were unfortunately victims of this violent protest in Bloemhof. Their car was set alight. Now, could the protesters now be victimizing reporters because they feel that media doesn't really tell their side of the story? Noah?
You know, I think that's quite problematic, because it boils back to the fact that people don't understand exactly what is happening and what the role of the media is. You know, if you look at people that go around burning properties and burning trucks, people's trucks, and business trucks, business premises, residential properties for the police and stuff like that, it has nothing to do with the media coverage. It has to do with the service they are receiving from the municipality. So the issue to look at would be the service, the source of the problem being service not being delivered adequately. So from where I stand, I think yes, the media could be brought into the issue, but you know, it's not right, and it's not legitimate, because it is not the problem is not being created by the media itself. It's being created by the municipality and the leadership within those areas. So to say the media maybe did not cover issues well and the media are being blamed for such issues, I think it's misplaced. It's a misplaced contention.
But do you think that these violent protests are often over-exaggerated in the media? Wadim?
No, I don't think that they're over-exaggerated, because they are what they are. But what we need to understand is that people are really, really angry. And they're angry because they're fed up. And what we hear very often now, it comes through the media, particularly from government, that people have got so many forums and so many avenues to go and raise their concerns, and why don't they go and do that? Why do they have to go and resort to violence? And I would go and argue is that most likely they have used those forums. They haven't gone very far. They were shut down. And unless they actually go and do something very, very visible, the minister is not going to go and come down, or the authorities are not going to go and come and see them. So it's an expression of great dissatisfaction.
But are we not encouraging violence then, to say we'll only report on you when you've started burning buildings, so that then that's the only time you're going to get any sort of reaction from the government?
There's a danger to this one, but again, we've got to go and look at it from the media's point of view. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, and we know that across the country. So media have got only a limited capacity, so they're going to go and be focusing on those that they can go and handle. And that's not an excuse, because media should be having their fingers everywhere. They should be doing that one, and they should be doing it across. So it's a fairly on both sides. But ultimately, media will have to go and make a decision. And Bloemhof is the same as Brits, what we had 2 months ago, and other areas. Unless something really significant happens in there, it is a bit of a challenge, because media don't have on the ground everywhere. The regional papers probably would have covered it, but that only covers the regional areas, and everybody knows it's not going to have the national reach or the provincial reach for the minister, the MEC, to go and come and actually go and do something. It's a difficult situation.
No.
Exaggerated, I think not. Why? Because there's certain areas where the media cannot go in. As you rightly indicated, that the guys had their cars set alight and stuff like that. So there's certain areas that are no-go areas for them. And what's happening in those areas, we as the public cannot see that. So I'd rather say maybe the issues are not being adequately covered, but not because of the media, but because the people are actually blocking the media from getting into those areas.
But shouldn't media be proactive in bringing the government closer to its people, so they fully understand, I mean, the processes involved in service delivery itself? Teresa?
Well, I think so. And I mean, I think with increasing uptake of technology, maybe there are ways that we can look at it. For example, with Khadijah's website and their WhatsApp channel, maybe people in these communities can use their feature
as
phones as a voice to get the word out there before we get into violence. But I also think, you know, as much as it's the media's job, it's also government's job. You know, media's job is not to be a spokesperson for government.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Teresa. And that's where we wrap this segment up. Stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to look at the media coverage of the commemoration of Chris Hani, as well as the Shrien Dewani murder case. You can be part of our discussion today by calling us on +2711 714 6847 6843 6857. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, and like our Facebook page. We'll be back shortly after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Media Monitor. You can be part of our discussion today by contacting us on the numbers that will appear shortly at the bottom of your screens. There they are, not forgetting Facebook as well as Twitter. In our next story, every year on the 10th of April, South Africans in different parts of the country organize memorial lectures in commemoration of Comrade Chris Hani. On 10th April 1993, the General Secretary of SACP, Hani, was assassinated by Janusz Valles and Clive Darby Lewis in the driveway of his home in Boksburg, who are currently serving their sentences at the Jose Mampuru Correctional Center. Now, panel, an iconic struggle hero, Mr. Chris Hani, but just how much do people know about him through media? Noah?
I don't think much is being done by the media to, I'll use the word, to sell Chris Hani to the nation. Obviously, the people that know Chris Hani, but a certain age group, we get back to the youth, a certain age group does not know who Chris Hani is and what role he played in the struggle for our independence. So, in a snapshot, I'd rather say not much is being done, particularly from the media side, to sell Chris Hani to the nation in its entirety.
Wadim, what's your view?
Yeah, no, I agree. It was an extremely important point in history for South Africa, a turning point for many that has changed probably or accelerated the direction that the country was already heading. These kind of moments of truth and moments of historical change should be remembered and should be reiterated on an ongoing basis. And it becomes more and more difficult as time goes past, because the kind of emotional issues attached, which are very important, are fading or don't even exist, as Noah has been saying, for many of the born frees. But it's very important to if there isn't the initial emotional attachment to what happens, to go and create new emotional attachments, to go and explain the significance of this one. Why particularly young people this day have and benefit from what they have because of that. It's not a political statement at all. It's got nothing to do with if you're in agreement with the ANC or if you're in disagreement with the ANC. It is a very important event that impacted on people's lives, and that is something that people need to go and understand, irrespective of their political beliefs.
With that in mind, Wadim, how can the media then ensure that historical events coverage remains relevant without being outshined by the current issues?
Yeah, it is a challenge because we've got quite a lot of them, and there's quite a lot of events, and like with any type of historical, particular struggle events, there's a specific fatigue that's being observed. So it becomes a challenge, and if you keep on doing exactly the same thing, then it becomes a challenge. But I'll give you an example. For instance, we are celebrating Madiba's birthday, and we are celebrating it by donating a specific amount of time to community services. In other words, what we do is we create an engagement, and people starting to go and be attached by what they do to something. And I think this is perhaps a way to go and bring historical events closer to the people by giving them something to go and do, something, an engagement point of view, something that benefits them, and it brings it closer again to them. So you can't do it for every historical event. You've got to pick them, otherwise we're going to be doing community service 24 hours around the day. And I'm not saying it's going to be that, but it's something like that. It's got to be something tangible. People are going to say, I'm doing this, this is the reason why, this is how it helps, and it becomes an example. Perhaps that's the way to go.
In which other ways, Teresa?
Well, I think another way is to look at the education system and in history lessons. What is the syllabus like these days? And even for children who aren't doing history, if, for example, an assembly, maybe Chris Hani is mentioned, so that then they go home, if there is any media coverage, they tap into it because they've heard about it, and almost then they can have discussions with their parents about what was it like on that day when he was killed. So I think the schools also have a role to play.
Very interesting idea there, Teresa. Noah?
I agree. We in history we've learnt about Bismarck, the Bismarcks. We've learnt about Adolf Hitler's and stuff like that that do not belong to this part of the world. If we bring in issues of Chris Hani's and their colleagues and stuff like that into history, so that students get to learn and know about these icons at a much
must be made
stage,
part of a school curriculum.
It would actually be very value-adding to the community. And
let's look at this panel. 20 years of democracy, 21 years since Hani's assassination. Why couldn't media do this angle of interrogation in this matter? Are journalists lazy? Wadim?
Journalists are as lazy as the people that they're reporting to. You know, I don't think journalists are more lazy than anybody else. You know, you've got a certain story to go and pick. You've got, you know, your daily run, particularly if you're in a daily newspaper. You plan certain things ahead of time. I mean, such a commemoration as this one was obviously planned before the time. Everybody knew the 10th of April was going to go and come, so you go and prepare something. It is always the balance between the current affairs, which are very important, versus the recurring affairs. And the advantage, however, of the recurring affairs is that you've got time to prepare. And perhaps one of the criticisms of the media is that media not always preparing for these long-time events properly enough. That's the regurgitated events from previous year, the same story. Looking at new angles, perhaps that's an opportunity to go and put some of the younger journalists, we always go and complain about juniorization of the media room, put some of the younger journalists onto that topic, let them look at new angles, bring that issue back to their generations. It's something that editors have got to go and look critically. There's many opportunities involved in there.
Yeah, well, you know, I think people are forgetting that there's very young journalists that were actually born free. Thank you very much, panel. Well, let's move on to our next story now. Local and international journalists traveled to Cape Town earlier this week to cover the court case of honeymoon murder accused Shuin Dewani, who landed in Cape Town on Tuesday morning to face charges including kidnapping and murder regarding the death of his bride Annie in 2010. South African government has spent almost 3 million rand on extraditing Dewani from the UK to South Africa. Panel, what is your views on this? I think media only focus on how much was spent on bringing Shuin Dewani, nothing about what's going to happen in terms of the court procedures when he actually arrives in South Africa. Noah?
You know, this is a case of a man who is little known both in South Africa and his own home country. The media black out substantiates this, and we need to understand that the media have priorities as to what they need to look into. With regards to this particular case, I think it's a case that has also been overshadowed by the Oscar Pistorius case. That's why we're having such little coverage, and also people are looking at elements that are only on the negative side. That's basically what I feel and see.
Well, we must remember that we don't actually have a court case yet.
Not yet, yes.
That is actually the point. I mean, we brought him back and he's appeared in court simply to go and say hello that he is basically in South Africa, just to go and be whisked away to Falkenberg Hospital. the state has got now 18 months to go and prepare a case for him, and during that time, of course, we still have got to go and establish if he's mentally fit to go and stand trial at all. So there is a very good possibility, for whatever reasons, that we either not going to go and charge him because, you know, the charges are not good enough, or that he will be declared mentally unfit to be able to go and stand trial. So there is a good chance that he's never going to appear in a courtroom again, and we're probably going to spend another 3 million rand to go and send him back. It's a risk that we have to go and take. So from a journalistic point of view, let's go and be honest, nothing actually has happened other than him arriving. That's where it is. So it got a little bit of the attention, but that's where the story currently ends.
Look, the media, I feel the media could have educated the nation a bit about the extradition laws, and we know that there was a summit basically looking into such issues. Noah?
Yeah. And also, I think one would actually have looked at his fitness to stand trial before they actually brought him into South Africa.
Yes, that was done in the UK, apparently.
But now, when we look at his current status, people are saying he has not been tested yet, but people are saying it's going to be quite difficult to establish whether he is going to be able to stand trial. That's why he's actually now being housed in a mental facility. So I think all those issues, I think, needed to have been sorted out back home in Britain before they actually brought him back here to South Africa.
Now, why are reports putting this trial out to be like the Oscar Pistorius murder? Now, we haven't heard anything about this going on film, but media is full out on comparisons between the two trials. Teresa?
Well, I mean, I think one of the points that's important is that Trindwani is British, and we know the British tabloids, like, for example, the Daily Mail, they are going to make a big deal out of this. So that's one factor. I mean, also, there are, you know, these similarities, even though they're such different cases. But basically, it's femicide, killing of an intimate partner, if Trindwani did indeed do that. So I think there are, I mean, he may not be as famous as Pistorius, but he comes from a wealthy family, and there are similarities.
I think Wadim once said it's the battle of the slain beauties. Is there anything you want to add there, Wadim?
I think Teresa makes a very valid point. I think what we're going to find, irrespective of how it goes forward, is going to go on be not necessarily a battle on the judiciary front, but a battle on the media front. We have the UK media as one of the most aggressive, one of the most tabloidy media across the world who, you know, have got no punches there. They're going to be tearing the judiciary. They're going to be tearing what they do and what they have before. Let's go and be honest. There is tearing the country apart.
Absolutely.
So they're going to be looking at every stereotype drawer that you have. They're going to be pulling that one. They're going to go and find that. They're going to go and not necessarily because they want to go and protect Diwani, but just simply about the media system that it works. So that's going to be an interesting, you know, aspect to go and watch. How's the British media and then the South African media going to go and respond? We have to see how that happens. That's
very quickly, Panel, I'm just throwing this around. Do you think the Diwani case and Oscar trial could have an impact on the upcoming elections in South Africa in terms of coverage, Noah?
In terms of coverage, maybe the Oscar Pistorius, not the Diwani. The Diwani one will actually be, I think much of the coverage will be done overseas, not here at home. The Oscar Pistorius, yes, it might actually have some bit of effect on the coverage of the election side.
Wadim?
I am concerned. I've got no statistics at this point of time to really look at that, even though I am looking at some of the data that are currently available from traditional media and social media. There is and it's just simply the way it is, a possibility, high possibility that just simply there's going to be an overshadowing of space. In other words, space that normally would be dedicated to elections and political coverage will now be taken up by the Oscar Pistorius case, which means that there's going to be less space available to go and discuss issues. If that indeed is going to go and make an impact on the election, it's a different story altogether, because it would go and assume that media coverage in general impacts on voter behavior, and that is something that we can go and discuss perhaps even in a separate show. But let's go and assume that it does, then it will. So it is a concern, and I suppose, you know, post the elections we'll be able to go and look at that when looking at the results and say, did indeed that maybe was a contributing factor or not. At this point of time, it's difficult, just simply too difficult to go and say.
All right, well, thank you very much, panel. After the break, we get to read your tweets and also discuss what the analysts anticipate will be the most talked about topics for this coming week. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, as well as Facebook. We'll return shortly after this. Don't go anywhere. I've got sexy legs. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Shimmy, shimmy now. Shimmy. Sorry. I forgot. Forgot I'm torturing ya. Noted. Welcome back. This is our final segment right here in Media Monitor, where we actually get to read some of the tweets that some of you, our loyal viewers, have sent us on the topics that we've been discussing today. Let's see what some of you have written for us today. Let's start with at Joy Teki. So she says, I'm a born free. I'm very interested and confused. The media is very helpful, giving us some light, though. Thank you very much at Born Free, at Joy Teki. So definitely media is doing something, but there certainly needs to be more in terms of the media side to get the youth excited as well. Let's take Victor Magnonia. Says, yes, but it's just that only few Born Frees who are interested in voting. Thank you very much, Victor, for sending us that comment. Matume Dukes Afane says, yes, the media is doing well at the Oscar trial and giving it all we need. I'm happy that some radio stations also broadcast it live. Thank you so much, Matume, for bringing in that comment. Let's take Petro Oosterhuizen. Says, yes, yes, yes. We also want to follow the trial. Thank you very much, Petro Oosterhuizen, for that interest on the show and giving us your comment. Nilofa Hassan says, let the man do his job. With or without cameras, Kheri would still be the pit bull. Thank you very much to Nilofa Hassan. Let's take Takani. Says, seeing other communities around the country doing it might be an incentive for some to embark on these violent strikes. Thank you very much. Let's take the last but not least. Joe Nanganga says, we need to create a pathway of hope to youths that through education and hard work, they can escape poverty. Thank you very much to all our viewers for all your tweets. Panel, I just want us to talk about something. Wadim, you mentioned something earlier on that a lot of stories are going to get relegated when we see the elections coming. Is that the issue with the AMCU story? I mean, this is 3 months of strike, no end in sight. What's happening here?
Well, it's a very good question what is happening here, but it's an incredibly important story because with every day that this particular strike continues, it's got bigger and bigger impact on the South African economy. And interestingly enough, not one of the political parties, and it is election period at the moment, has made any comment on that situation other than general. There is big threats to the country in terms of instability, not just for those people who still have not received a single cent of salary for up to 3 months. There is a few stories at the moment out there looking at the plight of those families and how they're dealing with this one. Enough that's in there. But it's a very, very critical aspect. We from a media point of view, I suppose, we are used to go and be dealing with a COSATU and with some of the unions that we know, and we know how they behave and how they respond and how they speak. But with AMCU, it's different. AMCU communicates and reacts differently, and we're not used to this one. It's a great danger what we're having there. I'm not pointing fingers at AMCU, but I'm looking at the situation in there. And it's very bad that the story is relegated to the business sections, where it does belong in a way. But it should actually go and be in the general sections. It's very important. We should not make the mistake that we've done a year ago with Marikana and
3
think
months
that,
of striking cannot possibly not be news.
No, and 3 months of striking just simply shows that the anger will boil and boil and boil, and we've got to go and be very mindful of what happens when anger boils.
Violent protests once again. All right, panel, let's wrap today's discussion. Now, what do you anticipate will be the leading stories? I'd like to see the AMCU stories back in the papers.
The AMCU stories, yes, because you know what, the effect that is having on the economy is just huge. The effect which it is having on the households is huge. Because imagine somebody, living 3 months of his life without a salary. children to feed, school fees, groceries. So I think that's going to really hit the headlines in the coming week.
All right. Teresa, what do you anticipate will be the leading story?
Well, I think the story about people's cell phone being monitored at the SABC and certain instructions given regarding election coverage, that's going to continue. We saw it in the Mail and Guardian. It's been picked up by City Press. I also think I read a story in the Sunday Independent this morning about the SIU investigation into Zaman Nkosi.
Yes.
And I think that will be picked up on, or I hope it will. And
it's a
continue to
celebrity
make
involved.
headlines.
Of course, it's going to pick up. Well, thank you very much, panel, for your insightful views today. And thank you so much to our viewers. And our viewers' contributions and suggestions is highly valued. Remember, you can email us your views about the show at mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. Share your views and comments on Facebook. Go to www.facebook.com/Media Monitor and like our page. You can also follow us on Twitter @SA Media Monitor. To access the WhatsApp election mobile application, contact 076-019-5862. And thank you so much for watching Media Monitor. Do join us again next week, same time, same place. That is right here on SABC News. For myself, Alicia Jali, and the rest of the QTIV team, have yourself a blessed Sunday. This is SABC News, all local, all global, all the time. Goodbye.